Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in. Folks, we got a lot of great conversations for you. First and foremost, there is a new mayor of the city of Chicago. We're going to talk about Mayor-elect Brandon Johnson, the Cook County Commissioner, who has taken Chicago politics by storm. I'm wondering, should we start to look at civil servants to be leaders of our cities? We're going to have that conversation. Also, Jill Biden, First Lady Jill Biden, wants to invite LSU to the national championship along with Iowa. Woo, okay, we'll talk a little bit about that. And then later on, folks, I got a very special guest. We're going to be checking in with Sherry Syntax, who is the author of the book Second Act, to talk about how you can prepare for your second act in life. So we're going to have those conversations and a whole lot more in today's edition of The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. I'm so excited because it's Wednesday. It's hump day. So happy hump day. Happy Wednesday, folks, to my online culture crew. Also, because, I got my sister on Wednesdays. My sister, Suzette Speaks, is going to be joining us in a moment. And she is the host of Suzette Speaks show on YouTube. And she is an attorney out of Miami, Florida. Yep. So we're going to check in with her. But today we're going to have a host of different conversations, and I'm very excited. Make sure y'all get ready to join me, crew, in the discussions as we stream live right now on blackstarnetwork.com. We're streaming live, of course, on the great Amazon News platform. We're also streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. We would love to hear what you have to say for these conversations. All right, first and foremost, let's talk about what's happening in Chicago. There has been a major political shift in the city of Chicago, the third largest city in the United States, where progressive candidate and Cook County Commissioner, Mr. Brandon Johnson, has officially been elected as the new mayor of Chicago. Wow. Now, Mr. Johnson, take a look at this, folks. This is coming out of NBC News. Mr. Brandon Johnson, who is a Cook County Commissioner and former teacher, he defeated the well-financed, tough-on-crime moderate Mr. Paul Vallis, who is a former CEO of the Chicago Public Schools, who promised to immediately bulk up the Chicago police ranks to curb a crisis of gun violence. Now, the victory caps a meteoric rise for Mr. Johnson, a 46-year-old who is a Cook County commissioner, an activist, and a member of the Chicago's Teachers Union, who in the first round of the mayoral race held February 28th, had been polling in 5th place before he finished second behind Vallis. He said, quote, "Today, we did not just acknowledge the assassination of a dreamer. Today, the dream is alive. So today, we celebrate the revival and the resurrection of the city of Chicago." Mr. Johnson also said that let's take this bold progressive movement around these United States of America. Chicago, we can show the country, we can show the world what's possible when we stand on our values. We don't have to choose between toughness and compassion, between the care of our neighbors and keeping our people safe. If tonight is proof of anything, it is proof that those old false choices do not serve this city longer. All right, so I know I got a lot of crew members checking in from Chicago. Y'all got to share with me what y'all think about Mr. Brandon Johnson getting into office, a Black man, Cook County Commissioner. He's an activist, and he's a former teacher. Yes, folks, a teacher. And I'm asking this big question because as I was looking at his story and his rise, I asked myself, this might be something we need to really talk about. And here's the question. Do you think that civil servants may make the best leaders for our cities? Let me go to my sister Suzette Speaks, bringing her in. Suzette, thank you so much for joining us as always on Wednesday. Good afternoon. How you feeling this afternoon?
Fantastic. Hey, everybody. Good to be here.
Yes. All right, Suzette. You're a political woman. You're a political wonky.
I am.
Uh, talk to me. Chicago, this is a big city, third largest city. We know that this city has been plagued with violence. So one of the big things that Mr. Vallis and Mr. Johnson had to speak about was how they were going to handle crime. Mr. Vallis said that he would beef up the police department, adding more officers and all of those things. And he's what they, and I never even heard this term before, just recently, Suzette. He's considered to be a conservative Democrat.
We have
Okay.
those now, yes.
Okay.
Like, what are we really saying, right?
Right, exactly. Conservative Democrat. But then Mr. Johnson, who said at first that he was not going to add any money to the police, he had to kind of walk that back. He said, all right, I'm going to add some money to the detectives to help solve the crimes, to help solve some of these homicides. But then he also said, if I'm going to add money to the police department, I'm also going to add some mental health responders as well. So I'm going to bring in some folks that know how to handle the mental health challenges of various citizens, which I see as a trend happening all across this country. Now there's a bigger conversation about having police officers and mental health professionals both on scene at certain calls. But this is interesting. It's an interesting shift. Mr. Johnson and Mr. Vallis, what's your take?
Well, first and foremost, it's always great to be here. Thank you for having me as always on
Absolutely.
Wednesdays. I will start by saying this was a close photo finish. Let's start there, right?
Facts,
We
facts.
had Mr. Johnson win by 51% to 49%. I will say the turnout was real heavy. Chicago is a city of about 2.67 million people, and we had over 550,000 people vote. So you're looking at numbers approximately 286,000 for Mr. Brandon Johnson, who you mentioned, again, was a former teacher, former administrator in the schools, and a councilman who was really unknown about 6 months ago. So meteoric rise is correct. He is a dark horse that we have never kind of seen in Chicago politics come to the fore this quickly. And again, Mr. Vallis garnered about 270,000 votes. So quite a few people still found his message appealing. But we have seen now a change to a more progressive, left-leaning type administration. Of course, as you stated, we had a police union, pro-police union gentleman, Mr. Paul Vallis, who was from a law enforcement or first responder, I would say, family, who also came from being the CEO of the school district at one point as well, to, again, a teachers union backed outspent candidate. Mr. Johnson was outspent 2-1 by Mr. Vallis. But what did he have? He had those teachers on the ground, walking the streets, knocking doors. They said in the last few days of his campaign, he was making 15 and 16 campaign stops a day. So he definitely hit the pavement, put in the work. But again, it was a very close race. So I wouldn't say he has some sort of grand mandate. But of course, to the winner goes the spoils.
Okay, right. And you're absolutely correct. And I think that's one of the big things about this. This was like a very grassroots oriented piece. Now, here's the thing that I think that we need to keep in mind. He's a teacher.
Yeah.
He is a civil servant. And I'm bringing this point up because I think that this could be a way for us to kind of shift the momentum, the political momentum, and the conversation about a number of issues of having civil servants being the leaders of the city. I would like to see something like that. Remember, there was a rash of, there was a point in time where, in a lot of big cities, especially like a Chicago or New York or even Los Angeles, there were a lot of people who would run for office who were often billionaires, millionaires, big business people, right? Corporate people. And because there's this idea, and it's not necessarily a true idea, folks, this is just a cultural idea, I think. There's this cultural idea that if you are good in business, that you will be good in city governance and management. And the big disconnect I saw, whether you're talking about a Mayor Bloomberg, you're even talking about, we had Mr. Caruso out here in Los Angeles. He's a big business guy. We even had, of course, Donald Trump in office. But this idea that rich men can get us out of these cities, out of the rut that they're in, but there's still a disconnect. And I'm thinking, okay, if you have a teacher, if you have a civil servant, people that understand things from a grassroots, community-oriented level, that we may get some more progressive policies and a better connection to community. What's your take on that?
I think that is a valid point. I think, again, with the teachers union backing Mr. Johnson, that's what gave him, in fact, the edge. And I think for the average voter, to take it away from the union voter, but to the average voter, I think they can relate to someone that comes from, a public servant walk of life, right? Everybody knows a teacher. Everybody has a good story, hopefully, about a teacher. And I think it shows that the issues, even though they were trying to frame it as, for crime or anti-crime, they're, Black voters, which make up the majority of who votes in Chicago, have a multitude of issues, and education is one of them. So I do think that there is a different life experience that comes from being a civil servant that helps bring a different type of perspective than a simply, I wouldn't say simply, but a successful business person would bring into public service. But they are not always, what should I say? I don't think they're diametrically opposite. I think there are business leaders who can be, compassionate and also see, issues from a variety of perspectives. But I do see your point. Sometimes when you're on the ground, when you're in the trenches, how you see funding, how you see the source issues of what's going on in the neighborhoods is really different. So I do think you saw that in the message of Brandon Johnson when he talked about policing, but he also talked about youth unemployment. He also talked about housing affordability. He also talked about making sure the educational opportunities as a teacher were on par with all parts of the city. So I think that spoke in this election a little bit more broadly to what Black voters really are concerned about, as opposed to just, are you going to fund the police or defund the police, and keeping it kind of cut and dry and very black and white and only pinpointing one issue, when actually there are many issues that influence the success of the police and really the city at large.
Absolutely. Look, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, folks, we're going to hear from you, my crew. Get your take on this. What's your take on Mr. Brandon Johnson? What is your take on his idea of civil servants being leaders of our city? Do you think this is the best direction, or should we consider another option? Join us in the conversation. Post your thoughts on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course, we are streaming live on Black Star Network and Amazon News. So stay with us. More conversation about Chicago up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking about Brandon Johnson, the new mayor-elect of the city of Chicago. He was just officially crowned or officially voted as mayor yesterday. And we got a little bit of tape about him. So take a look at let's listen to just what he said in his victory speech.
There's so many people who are responsible for this moment. And I'd like to thank and take a second to thank those individuals. But first, I want to make sure that I say this. The first thing that I want to say is to the Chicagoans who did not vote for me. Here's what I want you to know. Here's what I want you to know. That I care about you. I value you. And I want to hear from you. I want to work with you. And I'll be the mayor for you too.
Yes!
Because this campaign has always been about building a better, stronger, safer Chicago for all the people of Chicago. And when I say all the people, I mean all the people, especially folks who have ever been on a payment plan. So from Lincoln Park to Humboldt Park, from Jefferson Park to Garfield Park, there are so many people that made this possible. Of course, I want to thank my God. Aren't you glad, Chicago, that we serve a God who was at the beginning and the end?
Hallelujah.
That was, of course, Mayor-elect Brandon
Friends
Johnson.
have been telling friends about Colonial Penn guaranteed
talking a little bit about how he was going to serve those who didn't even vote for him. The numbers around that, Suzette, is about around 270,000 people who did not vote for the mayor. And so, for him to make that point, I think is necessary. You know what I mean? I think even Mr. Vallis and former Mayor Lori Lightfoot even mentioned that they will both be more than willing to help them in the transition, making sure that the transition is efficient and effective, which is, it's all the good political stuff. You know what I mean, Suzette?
Yes.
But the 270,000, he made mention of it. But, I think that's necessary. I think a lot of people, we're just tired of the partisan politics at this point.
Yeah, I think at this point, you do have to, whenever you step into office and there was such a very close race, you do have to try to bring in the people who were in the other tent, right? This is a part of politics where people who did not really like you or like your policies. And sometimes I think even in this race, we have to acknowledge that there was a stark difference when it came to racial tensions. I think sometimes we do not want to acknowledge it, but there was, undertones of why one candidate was stronger than the other. And part of it came from Mr. Johnson being an African-American man, only the third African-American man to lead this great city. So I think there are a lot of, naysayers who didn't actually like policy. There are also some who were seemingly led by other motivations. But we have to acknowledge that, everybody is not going to get the outcome that they want, but we still have to bring the party together. Again, they were both Democrats. One was more, again, center right or so-called conservative, and we had a progressive winner. So it is incumbent upon him to now go back and try to reach across to the very passionate supporters of Paul Vallis and say, I am open to hearing from you, even though you did not win this election.
All right, let me ask you a question, Suzette. Because part of me is still like, all right, that sounds all well and good in the campaign speech.
He was preaching too. He was bringing up Martin Luther King and
right.
everything.
But I mean, do people? I mean, you know, do sentiments of people when their candidate doesn't win? Do they really just be like, "All right, we're gonna just help," or do they get more divisive?
Well, it's about, well, let me say this. I would say Republicans are much more disciplined.
We're not talking about them.
But Democrats tend to kind of stay a little bit kind of divided, even though the rule, if you will, in particular scenarios when it's like this, when you're in the same party and you just your side didn't win, is to get back in line and to kind of form alliances, yet and still because your party did win. But I think sometimes people do hold grudges, and people are, hurt feelings are carried into the future when they should not be. So everybody should really want him to be successful. Hopefully that's what they come away with. And yes, maybe it's lip service, maybe it's more than lip service, but we really should hopefully have a city that wants to see their mayor succeed at the end of the day. But there are going to be hurt feelings, but that's a part of leadership, especially when it comes to, very, very hard fought races where, the same party is on the ballot. And you have to make these tough decisions, but hopefully voters realize, if he wins, they all win.
Well, and you know what? A lot of folks and a lot of crew members today, Suzette, are like really, really excited and happy for Mr. Johnson. Folks are just checking in. Everybody pretty much is just saying, congratulations, this is awesome. My man Conscious Thought said we dodged a bullet with him in Chicago, and the other young lady, the liberal Supreme Court Justice in Wisconsin, Pratisowicz. So we're folks are feeling like this is a good direction, and it's not a bad deal when you have a progressive thinking black man in serving in the helm of a major city like Chicago. Now, here's the thing. I think that, and this is the thing that I think about all of the candidates when they get into those big positions. When we talk about accountability, we got to have realistic expectations about what they're going to bring to the table and how long it's going to take for them to turn some things around. Generally, I give a candidate a good year before they start to kind of go delve into their agenda. Because for that first year, they're getting their transition team. They're still trying to work through understanding all of the systems. And then more importantly, they're trying to figure out whatever the previous administration left over. They try to clean up and say, all right, we gotta set that right before we move forward on our agenda. So I give it about a good year. So I hope that people have realistic expectations. What do you say about that? Having realistic expectations.
Yeah, I think that's realistic. I looked at like Chicago's structure. They have a very strong mayor. He has some individuals that he's probably going to replace right off the top because they were showing allegiance to the other person. That would be police commissioner. He's probably going to replace. They have something along the lines of like a public health director. Forgive me if I don't get the exact name right, but the person who had it before was at odds with the teachers union when it came to keeping the schools open, closing the schools, getting people back to work within a reasonable amount of time, et cetera, et cetera. So he has a top tier administrative staff that he's going to have to get in there, get people that follows his line of thinking or people that he can trust, start to align his vision. But that does take time. So realistically speaking, less than a year, I'm not sure how much progress can be made, but you never know, because again, there's some holdovers within administrations from the last one. You got to kind of clean house, if you will, from what I understand how Chicago does it typically anyway. And from the top down, start to create your agenda and put people in place that will help forward your agenda. But yeah, that does take time. So people need to give this brother time to align himself and get his ducks in a row as far as new leadership. But I think, it's very promising, and I can't wait to see what he does in his new role.
Absolutely. Same here. All right, folks, we got to take another pause. When we come forward, let's talk about First Lady Jill Biden inviting LSU to the White House for their victory over Iowa. But then she invited Iowa. What the? Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that and the implications that may have on her husband's reelection campaign. May not be a good idea, Madam First Lady. May not be a good idea right now. Look, we're going to talk about it, so stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
hatred on the streets. A horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Let's talk about what's happening out of the White House as it comes down to sports. Now, as we know, there was a big brouhaha around the fact that LSU defeated Iowa for their first national women's basketball championship this past weekend. Everybody's been talking about Angel Reese. Everybody's been talking about the battle between her and the team against Caitlin Clark of Iowa. We understand that. But now, that's the whole story gets a little bit interesting. Now, it is in tradition that the winner of the national championship for both men and women side of the NCAA game is invited to the White House. But this year, First Lady Jill Biden decided to kind of break tradition and not just invite the winning team, but also the team that lost. I'm not understanding this. Let me bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into the frame here. I'm not understanding this, Suzette. Why did they get a trip to the White House?
Madam First Lady.
Madam First Lady. I'm trying to understand.
First of all,
you know what? Her husband should have been like, Jill, you're killing me. You're killing me.
Ooh.
You're killing me. I was almost, I got the black vote. You're killing me. You're killing me. See, what's wrong? What's wrong, Joe?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. This is not how we do it. I think this one did cause quite a dust up all over social media. Everybody's been talking about it. And if you guys don't know what we're talking about, again, this national championship basketball game on the women's side, NCAA, was won by the LSU Tigers. I watched it. It was a fabulous game. That first 2 quarters, I was hype. I was like Jared because LSU girls were on fire with their 3-pointers. They initially got a little heat from Mrs. Clark off of the Iowa starter lineup, but again, they shut her down. And again, it was all smoke from there. And we saw what was a show of strength and unapologetic, like, I don't want to say just attitude, but in terms of like confidence from the LSU Tigers. And again, we have to mention, I guess, that elephant in the room, that the LSU Tigers are a majority black team, right? They had the swag, you know, they had the drip, you know, the wigs was looking pretty and the lashes was on point, and, you know, a couple people got tats and stuff. So they are kind of not the picturesque, for some, American darlings. And then you had on the other side Iowa. And again, look at their warm-up tape. If you just look at the warm-up songs, LSU was listening to Boosie Badass and getting in the warm-up in the locker room pregame, while Iowa, I believe, was listening to High School Musical. Like, it was such a contrast of both style and culture, right? All American, both. Right. But it was very, it was a stark contrast from these very imposing dynamics while they were also playing. So we saw, talk about the sportsmanship of Miss Angel Reese, and we can get into it. But to answer your question, Mrs. Joe Biden, I agree with Uncle Shannon Sharp on this one. I watched him talk about it, and I think this is getting into the stage of where everyone gets a participation trophy, and it's not right. You have people who have worked hard, both teams have, but who have earned the right to stand atop the winner board, and you're kind of taking that from them by saying, oh, wait, everyone should come. And I think in her defense, she was probably just trying to, off the cuff, appease everyone, not knowing that in tradition of sports, that's not how it works. So her office did have to put out a statement and say, oh, no, we invite the Tigers to come. And before they did that, though, we had, again, Angel Reese and her coach kind of speak out. Well, the coach, I think is Mulkey, said, if they're invited, they'll come. Angel was like, we're not coming, period, if we got to bring both. So she has been unapologetic about, all of the heavy criticism she's received throughout this season. Again, she is a tall, full-bodied woman, right? And they were calling her, in terms of national sports writers, things like being ghetto or other pejorative ways of describing Black women who are not, cookie cutter all-American, if you will, in a traditional sense. So there was a lot to be said about this game.
All right, so here's the thing. So there's been some updates on it, of course, right? The fact that, now that Joe Biden, First Lady Joe Biden, her team, her press team's like, oh, wait a minute. No,
walk it back. Walk it back.
We can walk it back. We can walk it back. But then Angel Reese responded on a podcast saying, quote, I don't accept that. I'm not going to lie to you, because First Lady Biden apologized. And Angel Reese said, I don't accept that apology because she said what she said. Angel also said, you can't go back on certain things that you say. You felt that they should have came because of sportsmanship, right? Iowa can have that spotlight. We'll go to the Obamas. She said, we'll see Michelle. She said, we'll see Michelle. We'll see Barack.
Lord, it's getting hot in here. Yeah, she turned it on its head and was like, that was your original intent. I'm not taking that. I know. And again, she's a student. She's, within her right to express herself and her opinion. But yeah, she was very strong about what she thought. And again, she has been unapologetic from the onset of the criticism she received right after the game, saying that, the hand in front of the face move, guys, something like this, was, poor sportsmanship, where Clark had been doing it on the Iowa side as well. And again, it is something that we are not used to seeing from women. I'll add that part of it, because I think sometimes when it comes through lenses that are biased and they don't really even know that they are, that, there's women who are standing again in their power to say, I am, the champion, now what? And talking smack. And again, that's a part of sports tradition, but we don't really normally see it as often in women's sports. So when we do see it, sometimes I think there are commentators that are uncomfortable and want to put women in a certain box to say,
all right, so here's and I'm glad you mentioned that, because here's the part of it. You said they want to put women in a certain box, right? So I think Joe Biden was, and we can't just automatically assume going and play into the race card. Like, oh, okay, because it's a white woman or predominantly white team, that's why she wanted them, because she felt sorry for Iowa. And I don't want to play that card, but I do think it's interesting. And someone, C.A. Pullen, checked in on one of our culture crew members, said Angel, talking about Angel Reese, Angel's going to bring money in that women basketball program. She's a sophomore, so she's still got a couple of years left in the program.
Yep.
She's going to bring money to the program. She will sell tickets. Now, here's the thing. When we see Black athletes and on the college or even on the professional level who do bring some level of buzz and pizzazz and energy and all of that good stuff and vocal and unapologetically Black, part of my concern is that they don't become like a freak show at the circus. Does that make sense? Am I going too far in thinking like that?
No. Again, our culture can be
exploited
by everybody else except for us. We can't have our culture, but when it becomes profitable, oh wait, we're down with them. Now that you got the backlash and everybody seems to be pro Angel Reese. Oh yeah, we're gonna I've seen her in a couple commercials, and I thought to myself, is LSU getting this money? Is NCAA getting this money? Is she getting this money? Like I don't know, but I hear you. Yeah, the pendulum can swing in our direction, but we might be more so, what should I say, the objectified, or kind of symbolic winner. And again, are you laughing at us? Are you laughing with us? Is it because your hand was forced to have her now in your commercials because the national sentiment among sports writers, or I could just say people on Twitter, because there were some people that, again, congratulated her, said, the well-deserved win, but there were mutterings of what kind of winning team is this, and kind of trying to throw them under the bus. And again, the look of both teams was, very stark in terms of the contrast of styles. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to have an implication of, because of their race, but the style of play was just different, right? The bravado after the shots, there was bravado on both sides, but LSU got that flavor. When it was coming down after the threes, I was feeling them. I like to see that type of play, that more, what should I say, show woman style of like, I'm going to let you know I'm good. I'm confident in my threes. I'm confident in my shot, and I'm going to celebrate after, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, again, there was this feeling as if, they had done something, quote, wrong. And I think I'm glad so much of Twitter, Instagram, and many other, predominantly Black voices were coming through and saying, no, it's a double standard here. And we got to call it out. For whatever reason it originates, we got to call it out. Our girl is not wrong in this scenario.
All right, so here's this. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll continue the conversation, because I didn't know this. But see, this is why I love the show, because we got a crew that's like, hey, Farajii, what about the part?
Let me know, yes.
Let me just tell you, my crew, check it in, and I love it. Folks are like, hey, yo, Farajii, you got to bring up the part where First Lady Jill Biden wanted to visit the locker room of LSU, but Angel Reese and the team said no. She wanted to meet with them before the game, and they turned her down.
Before the game? I did not know that. Thank you, Culture Crew. Okay.
This is why I love the crew. So, there's apparently, I don't know, Keenan, if we can find any video, if there's some video of that, but this is interesting. This seems like this was a little bit of a little beef simmering before the game.
Or they didn't want to get their game day. I'm going to take it back to my high school days. I'm not going to say I know what goes on at these levels, right? I used to play a little ball back in the day. But you don't want to get your players distracted and, oh my gosh, no, we're here on a mission. So I could see it in multiple different ways as to why they might not have wanted her there pregame.
I can also see, Suzanne, I can also see who Angel Reese voted for.
Yeah. Angel Reese
she wrote in hers like Barack. Is that with a B-A-R-A?
Listen, they've been giving her a hard time since she kind of walked out on the court, and it was I think her moment to say, look at me now. All the critics, all the people who kept me, again in that box, and thought that I wasn't, prepared, right? Because I don't meet a certain standard of, you could call it beauty, you could call it style or sophistication, economics. There are so many parts of this that, she received heat for and criticism for throughout her short career already as a sophomore. So she got to say what was in her heart. For all y'all that kept calling me ghetto, I'm going to let y'all know right now, I'm a champion. Now what? So It was her moment to
We got to
shine.
take a quick pause. When we come forward with more conversation, we got more thoughts about this. But again, folks, let's make sure that our sister Angel Reese is not put into some crazy ass position where she becomes this sideshow of this whole drama of women's basketball. Folks, stay with us. We got a lot to cover as we continue the conversation about LSU, Joe Biden, and Angel Reese right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the beef between Angel Reese and First Lady Joe Biden, LSU and Iowa. I mean, it's just so much beef out there right now. Let me bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into the frame as we talk about invitations and folks being disinvited and folks wanting to be there and then folks don't want you to be there. It's a lot. It's a lot to try to figure out. It's certainly a lot to try to figure out. Let me go to Culture Crew member Sam Crenshaw. Sam, you posted, you said, quote, "I am glad Angel Reese is unapologetically herself. Don't be like the other generations and back down," shaking my head. So I'm glad that I think we like that. But again, let me just say this. In sports is one of those fickle situations where you can be loved today and hated tomorrow.
True.
You know what I mean? Like you can be outspoken today, people be like, yay. And then next thing you know, when the money stops drying up, or when you cause too much of a fervor and people see you more as a liability rather than an asset in the locker room, you know, then things start to get out of hand. Things start to get really going crazy. And I'm hoping that, you know, even though I saw somebody say that this is Angel Reese's moment right now, she's embracing this moment. She's still a young woman. And as a young woman, she's a sophomore. What age are you in college as a sophomore? About 19?
Yeah, 20.
19, 20?
Yeah.
So you're going to see, so check this out, y'all. Y'all got to keep this in mind. That she's, you know, in regards to the first lady, this is still the first lady of the United States, right? So there's still going to be this part of, like, you're 19 and 20, you might say something. You might do something, like you are under a microscope. And I think that is part of the reason why I say you know, there has to be a way for culturally, we have to have these conversations, but at the same time, not putting Angel Reese to the point on such a pedestal that we forget that she's 19, because sometimes when you're at 19, you can say some dumbest stuff in the world. You could do some crazy stuff. And I just don't want our sister to be in that space that by the time she goes into the new season, she's this commodity or she's something other than herself. Am I going too far in this, Suzette?
No, I think your point is valid. Again, I think there are people that will see this now as a possibility for making more money, right? They're going to say, okay, she is a commodity, hot commodity. People are talking about her. She definitely carries a lot of influence and sway in terms of, you know, beyond the sport. But I do think that she's a part of this generation that's not the shut up and play generation. I mean, we've seen there has been a departure from athletes that are just simply, you know, going to keep their politics out of sports or going to keep just the way they feel about the current situation in our country out of sports. And I think she, again, is cut from that new breed, that new cloth, where it's not just a matter of me, you know, leaving myself behind, or she would have already conformed with how she looked or how she wore her hair, et cetera, et cetera. But this young generation is not really having it like that. They are going to be much more unapologetic, I think, than generations before. I do think she does have to be careful in terms of, again, I speak from a person that's older than her, careful what? So I think that we know the ramifications long-term for kind of stepping into it and going too far and crossing certain boundaries. I think we have to have, you know, media training, and hopefully her program has parts of that in terms of how they're helping her to become just a better commodity, right? She is now the hot thing, and she should profit off of that. She should. But there are other people who are going to look at her and say, all right, this is it. This is what the culture wants. And we know how much influence the culture has on mainstream America. Let's put her in, you know, these kind of positions or this type of commercial, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully she has a good team around her. Hopefully the school has a good team around her so that she can make the best decision for her future.
Well, that's what Derek Jones checked in and said. Derek, you said, can someone with some sense pull Angel Reese aside and tell her to shut up until she gets a media coach? She is being exposed. Well, I understand the sentiment. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, I understand this is a new place. This is a different space for her. So I totally understand the sentiment. Now, here's the other part of this, that when Angel Reese was being interviewed, she told the host, Brandon Marshall, that the team was not happy that President Biden's pre-tournament bracket, he predicted that the Tigers would actually fall to Michigan in the second round. And he stuck with his Pennsylvania roots there and Jill's alma mater. And he said and he picked Villanova to win the national title over South Carolina. So she went on record to say, quote, I think Joe Biden has put somebody else to win the national championship. He didn't even put us on his bucket to get us out of Baton Rouge.
I think that's okay. Let the man pick his bracket.
I
don't think that has anything personal to LSU. You can pick whoever you think is going to win. That's the way the brackets work. So I don't know the feeling of hindsight being 2020, like you should have picked us and why didn't you pick us to begin with? I don't think we can go that far and hold him, you know, as some sort of conspiratorial, you know, anti-LSU fan or them, anti-them. I don't think that has enough significance for me to bring up. But again, when you are feeling, you know, the joy and the confidence of the moment, is us against the world. So she's 20. I kind of get why she would bring that up. But for me, objectively speaking, I do not see that as being some sort of, you know, anything racial or anything like that. He's going to pick his brackets. And that's what you do.
But you know what? I wouldn't even go far. Take a look at this. Here's what we got of Angel Reese. Is this the video, Keenan? Let me know if this is the video. If this is yeah, it might be the video. So let's just play it. Let's play it for a moment and let's hear what Angel Reese has to say about this whole situation. All right, we're gonna get the sound.
The audio, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get the sound up. All right. So he's just showing us that this is
no. Apparently, she was supposed to come to our locker room before the game, but we said no.
Before the game.
Yeah, they were all. She was supposed to come to our locker room and go to Iowa's locker room. I don't know if she talked to them I don't know if she did, but we said we didn't want to. We didn't want her coming to the locker room.
I would love to hear why. Why did she say? There could be a myriad of reasons. I would love to hear the end of that response. Yeah, okay, we don't want to get flagged because that's not our material. Okay, got it. Okay,
right.
We got to cut it right there.
This is why this is the media working with another media personality. You understand?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, shout out to Brandon Marshall. He gets some good interviews, but still.
Right. But here's the thing, though. Like, I think that as one in media and communications yourself, we understand that words carry weight, right? That a moment like this, which is a lightning strike moment for Angel Reese and LSU, you got to kind of slow it down, slow down the tempo, slow down the chatter, right? Keep the game at the forefront, because you're trying to build relationships. If you're going around bashing this or bashing that, talking bad about this, talking about, oh, you ain't picked my team, blah, 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 and all of this other stuff, in a moment like this, it may bite you in the ass down the road. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, she just needs the right team.
And I'm not saying that she can't be herself, because some folks say, well, let her be herself. It's not about being herself, but here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. See, sometimes I think we get so excited that, you have this young, black, beautiful sister, young, black, beautiful brother. And we get excited and we just like let them roll. But you can't, we got to stop doing this. I've seen this time and time again, Suzette. When we have brilliance, young brilliance on display for the whole world to see, that's when we close ranks. We don't throw them out to the wolves, because sports is a wolf's den.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Politics, wolves den. You just don't throw your people out to the wolves, because these are the future. So considering that this is the future, then we got to be very strategic about how we position them, how we raise them up. I mean, we can't just put them out there that's we saw. And again, I'm going back to what we saw with Sha'Carri Richardson, right?
Very similar.
Look at what happened to Sha'Carri Richardson.
Yeah.
We were, oh my gosh, she's doing a thing. She unapologetic, like the sister, bop, bop, bop. Next thing you know, when she starts stop winning the matches, right? When she started to speak out on certain things, now we embarrassed.
Right. Yeah, it's all in preparation. We have the benefit of hindsight. We have, 10, 15, 20 years on this young lady. So we know, what a wolf's den, as you call it, this world can be when it comes to media, when it comes to fame and popularity and being the woman of the moment, et cetera, and how easily you can fall from that pedestal. So I do think if it's not the LSU people, because I think that's her first line of defense when it comes to their communications office and other professionals that hopefully can prep her for, the bigger stage that she's on now, right? A week ago, she wouldn't have had this platform, but she's still who she is. But that doesn't mean there cannot be others who either mentor, maybe from outside of the school, or, those close to her, knowing that, again, she's carrying a large weight on her shoulders now. It's not just her speaking for herself. She has a platform. So She has to be much more cognizant of what she says. Again, I don't know that she will be, but she should be, because again, long term, to maximize her earning potential, she doesn't need to, step in it, so to speak, to ruin this beautiful brand that she's already creating. So I think for her longevity's sake in the sport, for her long-term earning potential in the sport, for her draft potential in this sport, all those things need to be considered when she is now hopefully preparing herself for continued status in terms of what she's earned, so that she uses it wisely and it's not squandered on foolish mistakes.
I mean, let me tell you, I'll never forget, it's like, when I listen to like certain voices, especially in the sports world, when I listen to Shannon Sharp, Uncle Shannon, and others, right? And I mean, I'm like really listening to him, and I know you listen to him too.
I love Shannon Sharp.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but when he gives you that real like guidance, like not from Shannon Sharp, but like, bro, Let me share with you how this thing works, right?
That 50-some-year-old man wisdom. That's seen a few things wisdom. And again, I just want to share, just clarify what I mean. I say foolish because she's super young, so she's gonna make mistakes, right? And we should allow her to.
Yeah.
But I don't want her to make unforced errors. When I say foolish mistakes, I don't want her to make unforced errors. But go ahead. I just want to clarify that.
And I'm glad you clarified that. And let's keep it real. The way the cancel culture and the way the culture is in general at this time, you say one wrong thing, people want to, and again, you're done. And then in the sports world, as an athlete, you have to be strategic. LeBron James can say whatever he wants at this point, right?
But he have a whole PR team around him.
You got a whole PR team.
The tweets.
He can leave basketball. He can leave basketball. He gonna live well. But if you're trying to get further along, you do have to make sure that just surround yourself. Again, I'm not mad at the sister for speaking out or sharing what she wants to share. But at the end of the day, it's like sometimes we don't want to push her to the point where she loses that, or she is commodified or overexposed, or she's seen as some sideshow or something like that. Like, we have to figure out a way culturally to make sure that the sister understand, like, yeah, we got you, sister, but you don't have to speak on everything.
Yeah,
you don't have to speak on everything, right? Mm-hmm. And one of our crew members said, you got to learn how to pick your battles.
Good.
Because guess what?
Yeah,
Caitlin Clark ain't saying nothing.
She came out and she said that there shouldn't have been any kind of, backlash over so-called bad behavior when it comes to poor sportsmanship. I saw her give an interview stating that. So she did speak up on behalf of Angel Reese, but it's taking away from the actual game and what was accomplished by this incredible LSU team. They're shooting. Them girls, which I'm talking about, was her name Carson, from long threes, was just confident, shaking and baking and just doing their things. We're talking less about just the wondrous feat of what preparation does and what that teamwork does, and believing in oneself and coming back. They were down by a little bit early, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about almost the cultural and again, maybe that was foisted upon these young ladies. So maybe they didn't start that conversation, but they sure going to try to finish it, and they had to say how they felt. But they were just trying to play their game, and here we were, And I think for Angel Reese, just based on some of the interviews I've watched, it's like a lot of pain was bottled up, of feeling as if you didn't make the grade according to national press. Don Staley spoke about it. Coach Staley had to say, be careful how you describe our young ladies, right? They are not used to, and Serena went through this. So many Black women get criticized because they're not the shape of, or they're highly muscular or very tall or quite quote unquote imposing figures when it comes to their white counterparts. And that comparison there being made in public, in writing, by media, can be very damaging, very hurtful to the individual, but also creates this kind of societal acceptance that something is wrong with that body. That body is imposing or aggressive, or that body is some sort of, animalistic type of frame. No, it's the frame we were born with. This is God's gift. Yep. And we are going to use it confidently and should be acknowledged for that, the beauty of it, the strength of it, and all the wonderful ways in which it brings us to these points of championships, instead of being kind of limited in terms of our physical beauty compared to what society might say is a more preferred look, is a less imposing look. We got to be careful how we use language. And shout out to Coach Staley for speaking up on behalf of her players and women in sports at large, for us being, and I don't play now, but women being able to come in all shapes and sizes and all forms, and to still be beautiful and still be powerful, etc.
Absolutely, folks. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to shift gears, talking about from sports to talking about how you can welcome the second act of your life, both personally and professionally. We're going to be checking in with author Sherry Sinfax to talk about her new book and some of the lessons that she's learned. So stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. Woo!
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
There's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. We wanted to have a conversation talking about life, talking about growing, talking about changing and evolving. And when you get to a certain age, sometimes those growth and changes might not come as quickly, and even more so, sometimes you may not be as welcoming to those growth and changes. So our next conversation, we want to talk about how you can welcome and really get prepared for the second act of your life. And I'm joined, myself and my sister Suzette Speaks. We're going to be checking in with author Sherry Synfax, who is the author of the book Second Act, Living Boldly and Abundantly at Every Age. Now, she's working to dispel, this book is going to work to just talk a little bit about the statistics and, more importantly, to empower Black women to find their true soulmate with their goal to have a long-lasting relationship, but also to empower Black women to do their job, to take their professional goals to the next level. So let's welcome to the airways of the Black Star Network here on The Culture, Mrs. Sherry Synfax. Sherry, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this afternoon?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I am good. I got my sister Suzette Speaks joining us as well. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Suzette always talks about this stuff. I'm trying to be like her, Sherry. She always talks about this stuff on her show. So I was like, I gotta add more to my show.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I think it's a valid and a discussion that so many women have, especially point, depending on where they are in their life, just trying to figure out what's next. And I had a very powerful journey at a certain age in my life, made some major changes in my life, and really do live the life that I desire. And I think we all can. And the book is just a backdrop of how I did it, kind of where I was and where I'm at now, and that gap and that journey and getting there. So often we have a life and people observe it and they're inspired by it, but they don't understand, how to get it. So I put down my blueprint, but it empowers others to create their own version of their journey to get the life that they desire.
All right, so I guess we got to start from just understanding the inspiration behind this piece of work, because it takes sometimes we all have, quote unquote, our different paths, untraditional means to get to the places that we want to go, right?
Correct.
And the more and more I do this work of hosting, talking to people like yourself and learning more about people's story, it's harder and harder to make just black and white judgments about how a person got to the place that they have gotten to, or even more importantly, why they do the things that they do, right? And understanding their human behavior. And I think it's absolutely fascinating that you hear, that we understand, and more importantly, listen to people's stories, because their stories really is the key to understanding who they are.
Absolutely. I agree. Everyone has one, right? A story.
Right.
It's not that everyone chooses to put it in words for others to see it, partly because maybe their fear of judgment and things like that. So if I could go back just a little bit, I think part of what ultimately got me here is I met and married my husband during the pandemic. And my husband is an entrepreneur, very much forward in social media. So we'd be on social media, and there were so many women that were reaching out and just saying our story inspired them. It was picked up. We're in Philadelphia, so Philly Mag, the New York Times covered our wedding. We were in O Magazine around just living life, living the life you desire. We've been in Essence. We were on 2020, the 24 months that changed the world. And so we really had a national platform for people to see us. And I was 51 when my husband and I got married, 50 when we met, 51 when we got married. And so often Black women at a certain age are really told that it's kind of, the options are limited for them. There's all these negative narratives around Black men and who's available and their worth and their value. And they would ask me how I met my husband. And my answer to them was honest. It was, I met myself. I learned to love and fall in love with myself before I could even attract a man that would love me the way that I needed him to love me. So that was the inspiration behind the book, sharing my journey of how I fell in love with myself, created an amazing life, and then attracted an amazing man. I love my husband and we have an amazing relationship, but it doesn't define me, and it's a byproduct of the other things. I was already very comfortable in my single season. I was already very comfortable in certain accomplishments that I made. But I recognize so often for us Black women, we define ourselves by those accomplishments because society tells us what we have to deem as important. So we believe our degrees are important, our titles and things like that. Whereas now, and I used to lead with those in relationship, but as I evolved, fell more in love with myself, understood my personal worth and value, what I bring to a relationship is my positivity, my optimism, the strength in my character. And those things, it has very little to do with the degrees that I have, the title that I have at work. And so what I have observed is that when we fall in love with ourselves, those things are great and they're byproducts and they're reflections of our hard work and our ingenuity and our intellect. But it's the inside of us that makes us beautiful. And that's what we bring to relationships of all types, whether they're professional, personal, or romantic. So as I continue to evolve, my professional life elevated, my personal life elevated, my relationships with my friends that I've been friends with for a long time, those relationships deepened. I got out of my own way and was fearless, moved from Oakland, California to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, knowing very few people, but created a beautiful social network for myself because I just attracted like-minded people, and the goodness in me and the love for myself attracted others that were similar. And so that was the, again, inspiration behind the book, and just sharing very vulnerably how I got there and how others can look at lessons they've learned along the way, whether that's for me being in an abusive marriage at one point, whether that was being in a bad relationship, not so much bad from an abusive perspective, but just one that didn't value me just because that person had a title of lawyer. Like I was, because society tells me that a lawyer is a good husband or a good or I look good with a lawyer, or society tells me I have to be with a man, so I'm with a man by any means, versus being comfortable with saying, no, I'm okay with being by myself because I love and I'm comfortable with myself. So those were the types of reckonings that I had to make, recognition that I had to make, and be honest with myself and accountable with myself. So often we hear women say, oh, he wasted my time. And I tell them all the time, he didn't waste your time. You wasted your own time. There was an opportunity for you to reassess, reevaluate, and make a move and leave. And you didn't, for a myriad of reasons. You didn't want to be lonely. Society says we shouldn't be single, whatever the reasons are. So just some of that being, looking in the mirror at myself and understanding the changes that I need to make to live the life that I wanted to live. And I do, and I live that now.
Hey, Sherry, you want me to pass? Do you want me to pass the plate?
Oh, yes.
Because you're taking me to church right now, Sherry. Hey, Brother Damon, she's taking us to church. Look, before we move further along, I want to make sure that people can connect with you because your story is so inspiring and fascinating. Pretty Brown Mimi on one of our online culture crews. She said, Farajii, I love Sherry's story. What are her socials? So let's put your socials out there. How can people contact you? I normally do this at the end, but I want people to get this information early.
Yeah, we're on Instagram, my husband and I, at Just Facts, JUSTPHAX. It's a play on our last name, Syfax. Oh yeah, there we are right there.
There we go.
You can go to my website, www.justthefacts, again, JUSTPHAX.com. And the book has a website, www.secondactbook.com.
All right, so look, and I want to apologize because I think I may have mispronounced your last name, Syfax, so I want to correct myself in doing that because I don't want nobody think, Farajii messing up people's names. So no, So yes, Mrs. Sherry Syfax, definitely follow her.
And technically it's Cherie, so Cherie Syfax.
Yeah, see? And that's all good. Correct me, sis. Correct me. All right, look, I want to bring my sister Suzette Speaks into this conversation because Suzette, this is what Sharice is talking about is something that I think is so important, which is this idea that first you got to love yourself, that once you really, and I'm not talking about in a very superficial way.
No.
Once you really kind of work through the reckonings, and I love how you say that, Cherie, that you work through these reckonings of these cultural norms that you got to ask questions about, these personal norms that you may have been exposed to when you were growing up. Suzette, we gotta break through all that wreckage to get into a new place. I absolutely love it. What's your take?
There's so much, and I applaud Miss Cherie for her, ability to kind of put this on paper so people can read about love after, let's say, 40, because I think there is this narrative that is very pervasive, especially here on YouTube, where I spend a lot of time doing my show about women of a certain age not being able to still be quote unquote marketable when it comes to being someone's partner, right? In a heteronormative relationship, that there is less desire, too much baggage, too old is what I hear a lot of. And I'm grateful that there is a counterweight or some sort of testimony as to, that's not everybody's story and that there is love after a certain age. I want to ask you, because I'm playing devil's advocate here, because I talk about relationships and what women should be doing. And I guess that may go against what your whole premise is, that there is no should be doing. But I looked at the numbers just real quick to see the number of Black men who has never been married as of 2020 and a number of Black women who have never been married. And according to the census, 51% of Black men as of 2020 has never been married. And 47% of Black women have never been married. Why do you think that is?
All right, hold on. All right, hold on. I got to take a break. Because somebody See, why do you do this, Suzette?
I just want to know because I'm like, there's so many theories in my head, but I want to know what my sister thinks so we can get deep.
Love having
No, we got to talk about it. Cherie, I want to take a break. I don't want to have to cut you off. So let's take a break. We're going to talk about why these numbers are so high for Black men and for Black women who have never been married. And can I add something to this, Suzette? Can I add something? Should that be the goal?
Okay.
Can we? And I'm just using this person as an example, not to throw shade because I love them both. Or can we have an Oprah Stedman style relationship and still be happy, where they're not officially married, but they have a life partnership? So I want to kind of explore this a little bit more. So, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll continue the conversation with Reese Syphax, author of the new book, Second Act. We got my sister Suzette Speaks, and of course, I want to hear from you, Corinna. I hear you, Corinna. I got you. You looking, you putting yourself in a position. Trust me, he coming. Look, we're going to continue the conversation. Stay with us. There's more coming up right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking to author Reese Syphax, who is author of the book Second Act, and talking about how we can welcome the second act of life. Look at the book cover there, folks, looking fabulous as ever.
Lovely.
And we're very, very happy to have our sister joining us, as she's talking about everything from having the second act of your relationships to your professional career. And of course, I'm joined by my sister here every Wednesday, my sister Suzette Speaks, as we have these conversations. But Suzette, you posed a question that I think is absolutely pivotal, where you started to look at the data that you found that about 51% of Black men have never been married, and a little bit around 47% of Black women have never been married. Is that the data?
Yes, and as a contrast, for example, back as far as 1970, it was 35% of Black men and 27.7% of Black women had never been married. Now, again, for Black men, 51.4%, according to census.gov, and 47.5% of Black women have never been married.
Cherie, talk to us. What do you think is happening there?
Yeah, so a couple things. One is not everybody wants to be married. So therein lies, people can make choices. And so I am not an advocate that you have to be married. I wanted to be married. So that was what I manifested for myself. But I was also in my single season happy in fulfilling healthy relationships. So that's one thing. The second piece is there was a point where we couldn't even get married. It wasn't legal for us to get married. So, it's not like this country, this culture, this system has set us up for success in marriage, whether it's the structures, financially, all those things. And we don't even understand that financially it's more beneficial and advantageous for us to be married because the tax structure is so much more beneficial to people who are married. But that's not conversations that we are having usually at our kitchen table to understand how we benefit and leverage and take advantage of the system that we are in, because the system was not created for us. There is so much media narrative around those tropes of there are no good black men ain't ish. I mean, just those conversations, I hear them so much more in my conversations with women of color, men of color, than I ever hear in my professional world of people of non-color, so we have almost bought into a societal trope as well. And then there is the reality that there's a professor at University of Kentucky in Louisville. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's done research on a lot of the data. And a lot of that data is for certain communities. It's not all communities. It's even skewed. So when you look at, the narrative around how many single women lead households, they very rarely talk about that how many men live adjacent to their children. Black men are more involved with their children than a lot of other cultures. But we never hear that statistic because all we hear is there's all these single parent households. I know several Black men that live around the corner from their children, are coaches at their, soccer and football and basketball and all that. And there's not enough conversations around that. So, we can choose what we consume. And what we consume, thoughts become things, the words become our world. If those things are consistently at us and those are the conversations that we're constantly having, then that becomes some reality. That's not my reality. I got married during the pandemic, so my wedding was smaller, 80 people, 60 of them were married. I know beautiful married couples everywhere from having a second marriage to being married 30 years to being married 7 years. So when I look at the world, those statistics, I don't let those statistics dictate kind of how I choose to navigate my life, because I just think structurally there's so many things that are against us in our community for us not to thrive, that if I were to listen to that, I wouldn't have, multiple degrees. I wouldn't because I couldn't even be educated or read in this country, a couple decades back. So that's how I look at that. But the main thing is not everybody wants to be married. That's not everybody's end goal.
And how do folks really push back on that? Because I know I've been hearing and I read stories of young Black women in particular who are always bombarded with that question, like when you're going to get married, especially as they get older, in their 30s and 40s, and like, when are you going to get married? And that Suzette, why are you looking like that?
They be asking me, Farajii. I be like, get out my business.
Can I say you were one of the women I was thinking about?
Yes, I know you were.
But I'm wondering though,
guys. Yes.
I'm wondering, Cherie, should that be the end goal? I mean, it's because I know that relationships right now in this culture is being redefined, right? Like happiness is not necessarily connected with you being with a man or you being with a woman or something like that. And I think a lot of people are kind of coming to that level of consciousness the same way you came to it at this time. So should marriage be the goal, especially for the Black community? I'm not talking about everybody else. I'm saying in our community where we have all of these other social and familial, breakdowns, should marriage still be the end goal?
I would love for marital, healthy relating and healthy relationships to be examples for people. I really would. And when I say healthy relating, that doesn't have to necessarily be traditional marriages, but I do believe that we need to, as a culture, continue to see generations and generations of healthy relating. And I think that will then start shifting our narrative, our experiences, and how we show up, in the world. So yes, I do believe that some form of union that is a healthy relationship is necessary to continue to heal our communities and continue for them to evolve.
What's your take on that, Suzette?
I am a much more traditional, put a ring on it, like Vincent said. Thank you. I don't think that that kind of floating whatever works. I understand. I make space for people who have different ideas of what works for them.
Yeah.
100%. Go do you, live your life, shine bright like a diamond, all that good stuff. But I do think there is a lot of our culture that has not, as Cherie has pointed out, especially to women, the benefits of being married, as well as for men. There are benefits to being married. Married men tend to live longer. Married men make more money. Married men, obviously, if you are able to have the opportunity to have children, et cetera, et cetera. And tax-wise, there's so much more benefits. Of all the cultures, we are so religious, but I just don't see in our culture, even within and without the religious organizations that we have, purportedly, this promotion of marriage. It's like everything else is cool, but no one to try to appease maybe the social framework that is being given to Black women. Go do it yourself, by yourself, for yourself. You're not deserving of the soft life. You're not deserving for someone to have your back just like you should have his. I feel like there is some kind of, maybe it's me, a larger agenda to why you would want to keep these arguments going on, as Cherie pointed out, between Black men and Black women. You don't see it in other cultures the way you see it promoted here, both on right here in social media, on YouTube, etc. But within ourselves, we have internalized this narrative that we can't trust one another, that there's something wrong if a man seems too good, or he has to be perfect, 6-figure, 6-pack, whatever, for you to get with him. No, that perfectionism and what we think of as, the high expectations we've set are, I think, a part of what I would add to what Sister Cherie has pointed out, that has kept us from one another, both from, I'm speaking from the female perspective, of course, but I just think as a culture, we've done ourselves a disservice into thinking like, again, why marriage? The statistics show that children do better. People make more money. There is a reason why our counterparts don't play about marriage, even if they get divorced and marry again and get divorced and marry again, get divorced and marry again. There's a benefit there that we're not.
No, that's a great benefit. Look, I'm asking because this is part of the culture, right? Like everybody doesn't think on a we're not monolithic in our view on this. So we got to bring it up. Yes, ma'am.
And let me just point out, and I apologize to interrupt, but let me just point out this, because I tell people all the time, I was successful by myself, absolutely successful by myself. But my husband and I, what we're able to accomplish together, we just bought a restaurant and bar in Philadelphia. That's something that I don't know I would have been able to do by myself. There's a life there's a security that I feel with my husband that I just did not quite have as a single person. I knew I was okay, but there's just a security that I have with my husband. So that is the natural order of things. And it is definitely, when we talk about our finances and so many other things, that elevates us as well. And so, I think that union is so important. And I just think seeing us, again, that positive relationships where people can look at those and look at examples of those, our children and so many others, I think that's so strong and it's so powerful. And it's what will help with the healing process of our community.
Absolutely. Corinna, you said also, just because I desire a relationship doesn't mean I'm unhappy being single. God designed us to desire companionship with other human beings. I am totally in agreement with that. Yes. You can't go through this life by yourself. And Suzette, to add to that point that you made, I think it's a bunch of BS when people are like, oh, my single, I'm so happy that like, come on, let's keep it real. Like, I'm not saying you can't be happy single. But at some point,
Careful,
it's
Farajii.
okay.
Careful, Farajii. Go ahead.
It's okay to desire companionship.
100%.
That doesn't make you less.
And I think for me, I told myself, there were times before my healing journey where I told myself I was okay being single because I was afraid of rejection. I had not done the work yet to attract the proper person. So my relationships weren't successful. So I had almost subconsciously brainwashed myself into thinking that being single was okay. Now, as I healed and as I got healthier with myself, my single season was good, but it had its expiration date. And then I wanted partnership because I feel like I'm living an amazing life. So I want someone to share that with. That is kind of naturally how we're made up.
Absolutely. Now let's just shift gears on the professional side, because this is also part of the second act that you talk about in your book, Cherie, which deals with, that you might go into a career and been there for a long period of time, 15, 20, 30 years, and then you leave that that space, and now you pray, you think you venture off and being an entrepreneur, or you decide to do a different line of work. Talk to us about how does a Black woman prepare for that major transition in that space?
Yeah, so I left I was in Silicon Valley and left the medical device industry. And then even in that, partnering with my husband in some of his entrepreneurial ventures, what I talk about in the book is because I wasn't satisfied in roles. And sometimes we stay in things far too long because we think that's the thing that we should do, or we're afraid to leave something that we're comfortable with or that we've had some level of success with because that it gives us some anchor and security. We have to trust ourselves and knowing that, one door closes, another door opens. I know it's a cliche, but it's really, really true. And if we can get over the fear of discomfort, then Will Smith, I think, is the one who says life is on the other side of fear, and it really is.
All right, well, look, we're going to continue to talk about this. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll continue the conversation with Cherie Syphax, with Suzette Speaks, and of course with you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys. This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We're going to jump right back into the conversation with author Cherie Syphax and Suzette Speaks as we talk about welcoming the second act to your life. Now, Cherie, when you were talking about making that transition on a professional level, you're talking about going from Silicon Valley to medical medical technology and helping your husband in his entrepreneurial ventures. You know, that's not an easy transition. What do you recommend for Black women in your book?
It's not an easy transition, especially at 45, which is when I made it, because obviously I'd been in one career for a very, very long time, but I was no longer passionate about it. It no longer inspired me. There was nothing, I was staying in it because I was comfortable, and I just had to be real with myself about that. It was comfortable. I understood it. I knew it, but I was not inspired nor motivated. And in work, that's what you should be. But I also recognized that there were ways that I won't say sabotage myself, but I wasn't always the easiest employee. I tended, because of some of my own insecurities, I needed to be the smartest person in the room. I needed to challenge at everything. And I recognized I had to just get comfortable in myself so that when I went into my new career, that's just not who I had to be. I didn't have to show you or prove to you as a Black woman why I was qualified to be in the room. I think I wore some badge or had a chip on my shoulder around, what they thought about Black women, because there were so few of us in the room and at the table. And because of that, I came in like a bull in a china cabinet, versus understanding that I needed to be a collaborator, a bridge builder. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't off-putting, but yet people could embrace what I said. And by being able to hone and refine some of my communication style and skill and the way that I approach things. And I know there's a lot of conversation about masculinity and femininity, but I do believe that because I had done so much work on myself through meditation and self-reflection, that I was sitting in more of my natural feminine state. I've been promoted every year that I worked in my new, career. I have made relationships and things where, I'm constantly reached out for positions in different jobs and opportunities. And so I know it just required, again, healing some of that trauma about not being worthy and not being good enough, and being comfortable in who I am and what I brought to the value that I brought to my employers. Also being comfortable with being me. I talk about in the book going to my interviews with my natural hair versus needing to press it or needing to look any other way than who I naturally was and wanted to be. And that's still, shout out to the sisters that press. It's not even making a decision, but it's for me not feeling like I needed to be, a character or something that I wasn't, being totally confident in how I presented and what I was comfortable with. And so all those things, I strongly encourage us to be and understand our worth, our value, our worthiness, and just how really amazing that we are as Black women. And, any organization is fortunate to have us. We have so many talents, but we also have to just be mindful in how we show up. And we, just being mindful about those things. So that is a lot of what has contributed to my professional development and growth and success. And I coach other women to do the same.
Absolutely. So, and I'm wondering, and Suzette, maybe you can. We got about a couple of minutes left before we end this part of the discussion. Making that transition is not easy, but how do you balance it all? Because you gotta have. I mean, Suzette, she's an attorney. You know what I mean? And I don't know if Suzette, I don't know if you want to ever stop being an attorney and go into TV full time or anything like that. But how do you balance that? And I'm thinking as well, Cherie, that you got to have certain pieces in place in your personal life to kind of prepare for the transition in your professional life. Like you got to have, if you're with somebody, you got to have their understanding and their blessing to work with your schedule, your new schedule. If you got your family, your friends, if you got children to support, like there has to be some things in place, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Again, I don't go, I'm not in places that don't honor me and don't support me. So that's personally. So to your point, having friends that are my cheerleaders, having friends that are encouraging me to say, girl, move to Philadelphia. Don't stay here. You're stagnant here. Having people that are really willing to be honest with you. And then also having safe places and spaces to be able to share your fears, your concerns, some of your insecurities, so that they can remind you of how you are and who you are. Also understanding, what your capabilities are. if I figured I learned one industry, I can learn another, but making sure that I'm handling my business in that. It doesn't just come just because I say it. There's some investment that I have to make in myself and in the career that I want to have. So it's multi-pronged approach, but to your point, absolutely, your community needs to be supportive of you, but you have to understand, you have to also question, what kind of community have you attracted? Are they ones that are willing to be your cheerleaders and be supportive? How are you reciprocating that? Are you being the person that you need to someone else? So, energy goes both ways and it flows. It's a reciprocal thing. And so you have to show up for people the way you ultimately need people to show up for you as well.
There it is. Cherie, how can people get more information? How can they get a copy of your book, The Second Act, Living Your Life Boldly and Abundantly?
So you can go to the website, www.secondactbook.com. It's also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble's, Books A Million. If you're in Philadelphia, it's at Harriet's Bookstore. And then, like I said, you can follow us on Instagram at JustFacts, JustPhax. And then our website is www.justthefacts.com. Get on my newsletter. I always have inspirational notes that I send out weekly and would love to be part of our community. And if you are in Philadelphia, come to Booker's Restaurant and Bar in West Philadelphia, where my husband and I are there every weekend, so you can meet us.
There it is right there. Cherie Syphax, thank you so much. She is the author of the book Second Act, Living Boldly and Abundantly at Every Age. There you go, folks.
Thank
you. Y'all support our sister.
It's been an amazing conversation.
Yes. She's continuing to do some great work, having conversations about making sure that you can live boldly and abundantly in your relationships as well as in your professional careers. Cherie, thank you so much. We'd love to have you back on as you continue to make moves and continue to enlighten so many of our people. But thank you for being with us and joining us. And more importantly, Cherie, thank you for being so good for the culture.
Awesome. You too. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about Tyler Perry and his interest in buying BET. Stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Let me bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into the conversation. I'm about to get your name all.
Sheree, Suzette. It's all good.
All right, look, we got a couple of moments left. First, that was a dope conversation. That was dope. The sister bringing up some excellent points.
Absolutely.
So, super dope. But look, let's talk about this very quickly. Tyler Perry has now shown some interest, Suzette, in buying BET. Now, he said in a recent interview with Entertainment Tonight that he's making it abundantly clear that he plans to acquire the company that includes BET and VH1. He said, no, it's not a rumor. I've been there for 4 years now and have tremendous success. I wasn't expecting this to happen. So yes, if that is possible, I'm very, very interested in taking as much of it as I can. Now, let me just throw it out there, folks, that Byron Allen and Puffy also are looking to buy BET. And he's like, hey, that's all well and good, but he still thinks he's in a better position to get the network. But he does, he does acknowledge the fact that having black men and that black folks as part of the competitive bidding process is good for the market and good for black culture and media. What's your take on this? You think this is the move right now? Everybody want to buy a network. Maybe we should start networks.
Listen, the word black in front of that network, I think, is the operative word.
Right.
Being that we have so much influence over American culture in general, that is a very powerful network, and its messaging matters. So I remember, and I think it was mentioned back in 2000 when it was sold by Bob Johnson, one of the co-founders of BET, to, at the time, I think it went to Viacom, but I think it's on maybe by Paramount now. It's something about the idea that something called Black entertainment television is not owned by Black people. I think that kind of always didn't sit well, I think, especially in our culture. We know for a fact that, we, again, hold this position of great influence, but our art, our culture, our slang, the way we talk, what we say, how we dress is always commodified, but it's not necessarily commodified by us, right? People use it for expedient popularity, for building of their non-Black brands oftentimes. And it doesn't feel good when we see that happen. So for some possibility to exist that it could go back into, so-called Black hands in terms of majority ownership, I think is a good thing. And again, if it weren't called Black entertainment television, I wouldn't really care. But I think there's something culturally about that has us quite interested in who will become the next majority stakeholder in the companies.
I think this is the other concern area is Tyler Perry putting it out there. He's looking to acquire BET, or at least becoming a majority owner in BET. I think it's a great idea. I think that, you should reach for the stars. My thinking is that he's currently running his own studios out of Atlanta. Does he have what it takes to run a second studio and have that studio to be competitive enough against some of the other giants that are putting out content? Now, that's one concern. But the other concern is, and I'm going back to what Corinna said and a couple of other folks in the crew are saying, will his shows bring the caliber of the shows, the quality of the writing? Will it be stepped up? That's the big concern. Because you can have the network, but if your shows aren't really rocking like that, nobody's tuning in. Nobody watching.
I guess there are people who are in love with Tyler Perry's writing style and how he has evolved from just a Medea brand to, now some serious dramas and almost soap opera style. I watched The Oval on BET. I thought that was really compelling, and I watched some other of his new kind of productions and work, but there are people who are not big fans of his when it comes to his movies and think that, he should allow others in the writing room. It's only him, right? He produces, right? He get all the credit for what his, creative vision is, right? And other people saying, well, maybe you need to allow other people to come in and quote unquote, according to outside, commentators, strengthen in their view, his work. But yeah, I mean, it depends on who you ask. Some people are big fans of Tyler Perry's brand and his brand of, both TV drama as well as comedies. But I wonder if it would be just a 24/7 Tyler Perry.
I hope not.
Experience. I don't know if he'll make room for other writers and show producers and things like that. I don't know what his vision is, but yeah, there are people again who love his work and other people that feel like it should kind of be a little bit more deep.
Absolutely. Suzette, I appreciate you as always, sister. Folks, you can check out my sister, Suzette Speaks, on her YouTube show. She has a dynamic show, great conversation. Make sure y'all support her. She's on the Patreon platform as well, so definitely support her. but she's doing fantastic work. And Suzette, always thank you so much for being so good for the culture. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, everybody. Can't wait to see y'all next week. Take care.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank y'all for checking in. I want to thank Cherie, SideFacts, for checking in and being a part of the conversation. I want to thank my team for making the show happen today. Make sure you support us here at blackstarnetwork.com. Go to the website, download the app for free, and also financially give to make sure that the work that we're doing as a Black media, digital media space continues to happen. So make sure you follow us also on social media at Black Star Network, and follow yours truly, me, Farajii Muhammad, with The Real Farajii on Instagram and Farajii on Twitter. All right, stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.